Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin Kennedy, and today I did my book study on the literacy critical teaching tools for preparing responsive teachers. I'm really looking forward to sharing y'all some useful information that I gained. So, first off, the authors. We had three authors, which were Cheryl Dozer, the assistant professor at the University of Albany State University, Peter Johnston, professor at University of Albany State University, and then Rebecca Rogers, assistant professor at Washington University. I also wanted to kind of shortly mention there were three parts of the book, which the first one was the theoretical foundation of the work. So that kind of goes into detail of, how they got this information, why they have it, why they did what they did, or, what they explained. I'll jump into that a little later. Next, part two was the tools and processes, teacher experiences, and findings. So that was my personal favorite because it really dived in to tools and the way that different teachers used this information from the book, and also things that I plan to hopefully use in my class because I learned a lot and I found a lot of it to be very helpful. In part three, evaluations and summary of results. So that's kind of talking about how um, how they evaluated their students and how they assessed them, and they also had some templates and stuff included into that as well. So they had this is a data poem, and the data poem, it draws examples from conversations at the beginning of class or also at the beginning of the year. So it is called Difference. These are not like my kids. How will I know what to talk to him about? He would know all, he should know all his letters. He's in second grade. Don't ask me what I think. Tell me. You're supposed to know more about this than me. My job as a teacher is to focus on my students, not their families. I don't see color. I almost didn't come because I had to come here. And it's talking about an urban school. My student is so lazy. He resisted everything. What if the parents ask me why I am talking about slavery with their child? What do you mean, follow the lead of the child? I look at his paper and all I see are mistakes. I forgot to see what he is doing right. I feel like this poem really makes you step back. It makes you think, have I said these things before? Have I heard teachers in my building say things like this? So it really makes you think. Um, are we encouraging our students? Are we uplifting them? And it kind of focuses on um, like how we use our language towards our students, which is very important because students listen. They know, who you're talking about, even if you're, whispering to someone. I feel like they really understand. They catch on to the small things. And if we're being negative all the time, how do you think that's going to make them feel? Do you think that they're going to enjoy your class? If we're saying something negative about reading, do you think they're going to want to enjoy reading if Miss Kennedy doesn't enjoy reading? So the activity that I chose it's a Kagan strategy. It is called Jot Thoughts. So what I want you to do is I want you to get some sticky notes, and I want you to just pause the video, and for a few minutes I want you to think about what tools can we use to improve our students' literacy skills. What tools have you used before? What tools have you saw but haven't used in your classroom yet? So I want you to take a few seconds, and as I'm reading or as I'm talking about the book, maybe you may want to write down some literacy skills that may be helpful to you and your students. My discussion questions. We're going to talk about what are your language practices. So, how do you speak to your students? How do we speak about our students? So, how do we speak about our students to other students or teachers? And what can we do to create a positive learning environment for our students and their families? So the graphic organizer that I did, it's a web, okay? And in the middle, it has tools and strategies because I plan to focus mostly on the tools and strategies that the book covered, and things that I thought that were really interesting and caught my attention. So first, it says knowing the reading. So that's knowing the reading, so what you are reading to your students, and also knowing your reader in general. So that kind of plays into what do your students like to read? Do you know what they're interested in? Do you know what they're not interested in? Do you know what level of reading, what reading level they are on? You don't want to give a student that is on a kindergarten level something, on a fourth grade level. Even if they're in fourth grade, you don't want to give them something that's too difficult. You're just kind of setting them up. And then that's the same thing if you have a student that's on a fifth grade level and 10 second grade, challenge them. Let them, read what they are, capable to read. And also, so I teach kindergarten, so that kind of plays into, it says knowing my readers, so that's kind of knowing my students. What do they enjoy? So I know I have a student that really likes trains, so I have, read a train book, did an activity just so he makes that connection, and it's something that will keep him engaged. And that's the same thing. If I know none of my students likes, a certain thing, I don't read it. Like if I know they don't like spiders, I'm not going to read about spiders because I know that they will not make a connection and they will not enjoy it. Next is assessing and representing learning. So that is having students follow, so you are following the student's lead. So that is knowing what your students want, what your students need, okay? So when you are assessing them, it mentions, having documents, and like when you're observing the student, just so you have information and data to look back at, when you're looking at a student's growth. Next is building learning communities. So that's really just getting your community involved. How can we, get them to enjoy reading? How can we get them all involved with their child? And that kind of focuses on family communication too, because we want our parents to be involved. Unfortunately, I love my school, but I'm at a school where I don't have a lot of family involvement. So I'm always trying to figure out ways that I can, get my families involved with their child's learning. I know we do a home visiting project at my school, and we visit with them. We go to their homes and make connections with them, grow relationships. But I love that if we weren't able to do that, how they mentioned doing the family journals and dialogue, the stories and things that they have done at home. And it seems like everyone really enjoyed that, like they wanted everyone to do it. And I thought that was a great way for families to get involved and make connections with not only the students schoolwork, but also with their their child and their teacher as well, making those connections. Understanding that We are not against them. We are on the same team. We have one goal together. We want their child to succeed and we want them to do well in school. That's our goal as teachers. And then next is reading strategies. This was my favorite. I really enjoyed this because it made me kind of step back and think about the things that I could have been doing differently. So it kind of discusses making connections. So making connections with ourselves. So when we're making connections, I mean as in like having a book and how do we relate to that book? How can we make connections with that character in the book? Also, with the world, how can we make connections with what's happening in the world and what's happening in this book? It's really nice to make connections because it makes students more involved. If the character has a dog in the story and our students have dogs, they're going to be like, wow, yes, like, oh, my dog chews up my shoes too. Like they love making those connections. It's silly, but they love it. And that's what really gets them involved as well. Also, they discussed making like to visualize the text. So think about the text. What do you think, or um, what will happen next in the story? It's kind of just imagining what you think will happen, and that goes into making predictions too. Um, have students make predictions when you're starting a story. Show them the title, let them see the title page, and ask them, what do you think, what's your prediction, what do you predict will happen in the story? And that's another way to make connections. Also ask questions while they're reading. In this case, my students can't quite read yet, but I try to ask questions, or I have now. I try to ask more questions when I'm reading the story instead of like waiting till the end to, ask questions. So I really focus on trying to have them, um, you know, ask details and, ask questions about, I wonder why the author did this. I wonder why the characters are, going here, or, just kind of making them really think about what we're reading. Why are we reading it? Next is reflective teaching. So, reflective teaching is really for teachers to reflect on themselves. So, when they're, could be doing a reading lesson, um, think about, well, did that work for all of my students? What could I have done differently? Could I have, spent a little more time on a certain part? Or, what can I do better next time? So it's really just kind of asking yourself, stepping back and thinking about, it's like, did I give my all for this lesson? Was I detailed enough? Do you think my students understood it? So that kind of really made me think of, what I can be doing different to help my students. And then next is research. So that kind of ties in with the reflective teaching, kind of trying to figure out what you can do better, what different reading strategies could work best for your students. So it's all about researching and, knowing what will, work best for your students. Also, in the book, it focuses a lot on agency and acceleration. So, agency is the idea that by acting thoughtfully, one might actually affect change. So, teachers impact others, students, teachers, schools, and society more generally. So, I feel like we're role models. Teachers, we do impact, especially our students. They look up to us. They expect us to, take care of them, be there for them, teach them. So I feel like we have really big shoes to fill. So, um, agency, it's a personal narrative in which self is a protagonist who confronts and solves problems. So, we're problem solvers. We are there for our students. Um, Also, we as educators, we should be giving our all in everything we do. So when we are reading or when we are teaching, we need to give our all. Let our students know how much we love reading, because like I said, we we're role models, so they look up to us. They expect us to solve problems and help them. So if we are showing how much we enjoy reading, that's gonna impact them. They're gonna want to, read as well. Next is acceleration, and it is in order to accelerate a student's literacy learning and to produce agency, instruction must be continuously responsive. That is, it must be responsive to the child's learning needs at the time the child needs it. So, acceleration is also to solve problems. I know they talked about that was kind of the main goal in the literacy lab, like the school that they were, discussed, is for understanding that not all students are on the same reading level, or they're not all going to learn at the same pace. So we need to take into consideration what the student needs best at that time and what we can do as educators to help them be successful and not push them to do something that they are not ready for. Next was risk, difficulty, and control. I thought this was very interesting. Um, it was a very interesting part of the story, kind of makes, or the book, sorry. So it says students need to try new things. To stick their necks out without feeling the risk is too great. So it's talking about not being afraid to step out of your comfort zone, and, it could be so successful. So, while feeling that much is to be gained from the adventure, among other things, this means continuous adjustment of difficult through task selection, presentation, and mediation, so that there are multiple points of entry for different learners with a range of experience. It means providing supportive and mediating language. So, that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. How do we speak to our students? Are we positive? Are we negative? Um, Students listen, they hear what we say. If I'm like, oh, I really don't like this story, are they going to like it? No. And also, we just need to be kind to them as well. We need to lift up our students and, be that positive role model, because think about it. At home, they may not have kind words given to them all the time. So, as educators, we need to be there for them and be supportive, so that maybe and hopefully we will impact them and, just be there for them. Overall, I really, really enjoyed this book. So, it really taught me a lot, and I know there's a lot of things that I didn't include that I wish I could have, but I really plan to use a lot of these things in my classroom, and maybe even share with my. We have our little 10-minute meetings a week, and I would like to share this with um, the other teachers as well, because I know I think they could really benefit from this. The reading strategies were great. I loved how they mentioned, making connections. And also, I don't think I mentioned it, but also for teachers to model things. I feel like often we just kind of assume that our students know how to do something. But if we're modeling for our students, they will know exactly what is expected of them and what they should be doing. So we need to let our students know what we want from them. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really beneficial, and um, thank y'all for watching. And I hope y'all were able to write a few more notes on your sticky notes about teaching strategies that you can use in your classroom. So, anyway, thank y'all so much.